Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Never before in the history of sports podcasts have two men brought you opinion and analysis like these two. They speak for a city that's desperate for wins and titles, not whining and travesty. You might not agree with what they have to say, but you'll defend their right to say it. Sports fans across the world, from Chicago, Illinois, this is the Mac and Reed Show.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Mac and Reed Show right here on the Barroom Network. Remember to follow at Barroom Network for all the great Bears coverage we have throughout the season, breaking news, and all the great programming across the board. I'm Evan Mack, as always, joined by Ross Reed. You can follow us on social media. I'm at The Real Evan Mack. Ross is at Ross Reed. If you've missed any of our previous episodes, they're up on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your audio media. Remember to tell a friend, like, subscribe, tell a friend or two. You got to watch it live on YouTube here to see our beautiful faces and see Ross's hair on fleek, as the kids say, I think. I don't know if they still say it. But we got a lot to get to on the show today. Remember, you can also comment in the stream as well. Bonus of watching on the Barroom Network here on YouTube. And we have a lot to get to. As I mentioned, we got to talk about Bears, a little recap of the Rams-Bears game where the Bears get a win to improve to 2-2. Then, of course, we will preview the Panthers game, what happened between that last win and how the Bears have been preparing for the Panthers, hoping to go 2 in a row. Talk about NFL headlines as well. 4 weeks into the NFL season. Injuries, surprises, rankings, all that good stuff. Talk about October baseball, a dismal White Sox season coming to an end, and not a great season on the north side, so a brief review on that. But, of course, we begin. Before I get to anything, first things first, hope you all join me in wishing Ross a belated happy birthday. You got the Bears, the dub against the Rams this last Sunday. You should probably go to the Panthers game, Ross, and keep this thing going. You're aging like fine wine. How are you, sir? Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you for the well wishes. I feel great. Happy to be here. Happy that's October. Obviously, it's my favorite month of the year, favorite time of the year. We get that sports equinox where you get kind of the football going on, you got baseball going on, you've got NBA is back soon, hockey's getting started, Premier League is this weekend. It's the best time of the year, in my opinion, for sports is the month of October.
He threw in football, Ross did.
Absolutely.
He's got it all going on. It's almost too much. And then we have all this great television programming. You know, I love my stories. But we begin, as always, with the Bears. And again, as I mentioned in the intro, they improved to 2-2, 2-0 at home under Caleb Williams, and they got a much-needed win against the Rams. Another, one-possession game win, but special teams and defense really stood up tall and were able to seal the victory. It was one of those games, again, where we're going to be watching Caleb Williams, in his development game to game. He did what he needed to do. It was sort of an unimpressive game when, it was about 170 some yards. But he made the throws that mattered. He had that touchdown pass to DJ Moore. That was solid and, made big throws when it counted. The important thing was, engineering 4 scoring drives, which was great. He was efficient, arrow pointing upward. And, of course, perhaps the biggest thing is not turning the ball over when you're in that position. Took a few sacks, but we know that offensive line had to adjust. Tevin Jenkins getting banged up and Braxton Jones and everybody just it's really, what you don't want to see as a Bears fan. But this is across the league. You just kind of have to adjust. But, right when we started trashing DeAndre Swift, he comes along and he has a great game on the ground and receiving as well. He led the team in both categories this past Sunday against the Rams. I know Ross is pissed that Roschon Johnson didn't get one more touchdown to cash in on his bet and on the twofer. It was his hot tip last weekend. But he did get in the end zone once, as did Swift. DJ Moore, as I mentioned, got in the end zone for the first time this season. So it's nice to see Caleb Williams build that rapport. Keenan Allen wasn't a huge factor, but, it's, again, sort of that first game back after missing some significant time from injury. Defense coming up big, forcing turnovers and making big plays. Jaquan Brisker with perhaps his best game in the NFL yet. He had 12 tackles, a sack, two for a loss. He had an interception. He was close to two. I remember the one that got called back where he stepped out of bounds and came back in. And Gervon Dexter, really nice interior piece, who's getting a lot of praise this week, making a big impact on that defensive line. Just a complete game from the team. And albeit the Rams are a battered team, Kyron Williams was able to do what he needed to do. Tutu Atwell had his moments. And Stafford, has a history against this team. But I think that the Bears, made the most of their opportunities. And again, talking about a complete game, when we were trashing Torrey Taylor for being a fourth-round pick, the way he was kicking, he was Mr. Coffin Corner, pinning the Rams deep repeatedly inside the 10. It helps seeing the Bears build all this chemistry across the board, and it should only improve as they go to host the Panthers, as we'll talk about very shortly here. But I think what impressed me the most was getting to the ground game, which is just so crucial, and adjusting on that offensive line when there's going to be injuries that happen. And then the defense, the things that you need to improve on are obviously stopping the run. Kyron Williams, almost went for 100 yards. But when you're playing the pass as well as they did, I'm not going to be as mad about it. I think that this secondary is one of the best units in the league. I think that this defensive line just needs a little bit of time. I think they need one more piece to really be, game wreckers. But we saw Matthew Stafford being hurried, and I think that you give credit to the D coordinator and credit to Aberfurst and company. Seeing these blitz packages and the pressure they were able to put on Matt Stafford, who is a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and he's no slouch. He's a Pro Bowl quarterback. Former number one overall pick. So you like the win, Ross. What were some takeaways from you?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We started on the defense side of the ball. That was Jaquan Brisker's best game as a pro. He had, 12 total tackles. He had a sack. He had, 2 tackles for a loss. He had the interception. He had the interception that was called back because he was not able to reestablish himself in bounds. But I thought he was awesome. I thought TJ Edwards had a good bounce back game as well. It was also nice to see Montez Sweat get in there and get a sack. Talked about Dexter. There's been a lot of hype this week about how Dexter is turning out to be the better pro over Jalen Carter. I don't like to put two guys against each other like that, but Dexter is turning into a really, really fine defensive tackle. Great find for Ryan Poles there. And his defense keeps doing what they're doing, which is they're keeping the plays in front of them, and they're keeping these teams out of the end zone multiple times. And they're allowing, their themselves to really make a play at the end of these games and put a clamp on things. I thought, from sitting in the stands that I had a good angle. You see what Sean McVay is able to do with some of these routes for these wide receivers. It is absolutely outstanding. You see why he's one of the best head coaches in the league right now, one of the best play callers. And then Matthew Stafford is a guy that is, he's got a Hall of Fame potential career. And he was able to, as a veteran quarterback, get to some spots in the pocket and find some receivers down the field. And so I actually give the defense a lot of credit for only giving up 18 points to that Rams team, even though they are banged up. And obviously, Torrey Taylor had an awesome game, was able to pin them deep, especially in the fourth quarter, which allowed the defense and the crowd to take over and really tee off. On the offensive side of things, I was really impressed with what Caleb Williams did. I think that he's become very efficient right now, very much like how Drew Brees looked in his early Saints days, and able to get the high efficiency plays to keep the chains moving down the field. He was able to hit the open targets. The guy stands in the pocket as tall as can be. You would think he's 6'5" in that pocket, the way he stands in there, even while it's collapsing, and he's able to get to the check down guy or find his receivers down the field, especially that one play with DeAndre Swift comes to mind, where he was able to hit him on a little screen pass almost on the last minute before he got sacked, and Swift goes down the field for about 30, 40 yards and leads to a score for the Bears. So, I thought Caleb, to me, what impressed me the most about him so far is his pocket presence. And he's taking care of the football right now, especially when the pocket gets really dirty. Another clean game for him. And the offense scored 4 times. They had 3 touchdowns, which is what you want to see every week. If the offense is able to put up 3-4 touchdowns a week, we're going to take that, whether it's on the ground or in the game or in the passing game. I thought the offensive line looked better, coincidentally, when Tevin Jenkins went out with injury and Nate Davis came in. So that's something to keep an eye on this week. It looks like Tevin Jenkins is going to be able to go this week against the Panthers, but I think the Bears are still trying to figure out who their 5 best guys are, in particular that interior part of the line. And it was good to see DeAndre Swift have a DeAndre Swift football game. 93 yards, on 16 carries, but 7 receptions for 72 yards. That's exactly what you paid him to do. And if he can kind of replicate that week after week, I think this offense is going to keep humming. They're so close. We talked about it last week. They're close to a breakout game. They look better. They look like a competent offense this week. They're even closer. I think the recipe for a breakout game is this week against a very, very bad Carolina Panthers team that's going through a lot of injuries right now.
Yeah, they're in a good position to continue their success against a pretty weak Panthers team. And, you touched on just able to roll on the offensive line as far as, Tevin Jenkins being questionable going into this game and dealing with injuries and waiting for Ryan Bates, to come back from IR. It is, it's going to be a work in progress, as we know, but it's so impressive to see Caleb Williams do little things like just have pocket patience and for him to not rush things and then to go from one game to the next and improve on his mistakes, i.e. turnovers and, throwing the ball away and maybe getting a grounding call. You could see him growing up before our eyes, even in just 4 games here. And that should continue again against the Panthers. And Visor Joe asked, who's your guys' Bears MVP after 4 weeks? And I think you could point to, on the defense, it's easy to say Jalen Johnson as a leader and the effect that he has had on a lot of these wide receivers that have come in against the Bears team. But, you could easily point to a guy like Dexter, who's just been really pressuring the quarterback very well and creating disruption. I think it's someone in that secondary. I would go Jalen Johnson just by default, but TJ Edwards is right up there as well, just the presence that he has. Who's your MVP after 4 weeks, Ross?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think on the defense side of the ball, it's Dexter for me, just because he's been that consistent pass rusher opposite Montez Sweat, and he's just been everything that the Bears could hope and wish for this season. He's been outstanding. Brisker is going to be in the team picture too, especially after a week that he had. And then the offensive side of the ball, I know it's not the stats don't look phenomenal. I'm super impressed with Caleb Williams has done in a dirty pocket. One of the worst offensive lines in the league right now. For him to be able to have this team 2-2, he's knocking on the door of 1,000 yards already to start his career. 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's been sacked 16 times already, but that's not his fault. 61% completion percentage. I'm super impressed with what the rookie's done this far.
Yeah, that's a good point. On offense, you have to give it to Caleb Williams with the way he's been able to adjust under pressure, playing pretty solid defenses thus far. No slouches. It's still NFL talent. It's a huge jump from, I know he's played at a high level for a long time, but the jump from USC to the NFL and this Bears team is huge. I don't care what kind of talent you have around him. Then week 4 MVP was certainly Torrey Taylor. He helped seal that game. We'll see if he can continue this trade. Yeah, this is a trend, I should say, of pinning teams deep. But I mean, this really, again, goes back to Ryan Poles. I think that, it's funny looking at this Panthers game to always think of just the history and what could have been and how the Bears are put in this position now, are obviously largely because of Ryan Poles and what he has been able to do, put together, hitting on Gervon Dexter, hitting on, guys on the offensive line and again, making that DJ Moore trade happen and the trade that eventually landed them Caleb Williams. So it's pitting the two franchises against each other is fun to see because you see the opposite end of the spectrum and who certainly won this trade at this point. As far as coaching, I feel like, I talked about defensive coordinator, really, Washington doing very well. Has Shane Waldron sort of stepped up in your eyes? I think obviously we're seeing seeing his stock rise when you see DeAndre Swift and Roshan Johnson being utilized better. I think that we've kind of just scratched the surface with the passing play calling. I think, with Cole Kmet can have an up and down game, but having the trio of Odunze and Keenan Allen and DJ Moore going, it could be very good for Shane Waldron in this offense.
Yeah, I agree. What I want to see moving forward now is you have to get a little bit more vertical in this passing game. So at some point, even though the offensive line is a little bit of a mess, you have to allow Caleb Williams the opportunity to push the football down the field a little bit more. And you have to get a little bit creative with some of the routes that you're running right now, in particular with guys like DJ Moore, Roman Dunze, and Keenan Allen. These are three phenomenal, talented wide receivers, and these guys have their route tree is unlimited. And I think you have to be able to open up the books a little bit for them and start to push this ball downfield with any of them, but still keep it high percentage. You look at the targets right now through 4 games. DJ Moore has 34 targets on the season and 22 catches. Roman Dunze, 23 targets on the season with 10 catches. And then I look at Keenan Allen with 14 targets and 7 catches. I'd like to see that gap close a little bit more, where the receptions of the targets are a little bit closer together. So some more high percentage throws for Caleb Williams, they're able to push the ball down the field. The only guy that really right now is getting there is Cole Kmet. He has 18 receptions this season on 20 targets. That's on par for what you're looking for. So, right now, early on in the season, Roman Dunze is looking like your best deep threat option. But we all know DJ Moore can certainly get there, and so can Keenan Allen. So I'm hoping that going into this week against the Panthers, against a bad team, he's able to shorten his rotation a little bit. I only want to see those 3 wide receivers on the field, especially for the next couple of weeks against a bad Panthers team, a bad Jaguars team, and a bad Patriots team, and a lot less of guys like DeAndre Carter, and we don't see Velus Jones anymore or anything like that. But keep your best players on the field right now. Let's start to get to an offensive rhythm and really get this passing game going. Because then once it does, now all of a sudden we start looking at the Bears as like, okay, now we feel like we could be a real playoff team.
With, Kari Blasingame injured too, it was interesting to see Doug Kramer getting pulled up as fullback. That's like I said in the week ago where we were previewing this Rams game. I don't care how you get the ball in the end zone. If you're at the goal line, if you need to put an offensive tackle at an extra lineman out there, lined up at fullback or tight end or wherever that position may be, just line them up there. It's an extra blocker. It'll only help your chances to put points on the board, especially when you're inside the 5, which was just crazy, in the prior game where they against the Colts where they weren't able to do such a thing. So, on the ground, seeing DeAndre Swift succeed was great. It was sort of, it just was a long time coming. Obviously, through 3 games, he was a dud. You hope that it continues with the Panthers. They're not exactly world beaters on defense, on their run defense. I think on the offense too, it was cool to see Mercedes Lewis playing his 272nd NFL game. It's a big accomplishment. I know he doesn't contribute a lot as far as numbers go, but you saw in that post-game speech just the leadership that he has as Big Dog. I love that nickname for him. That's great. And this team is mostly a mix. I think there's not too many vets out there. It's mostly guys under 30 at this point with how this team is assembled. And you hope that they can build this core and stay together, these certain key guys that we've talked about, and build some success. And it starts certainly with this next stretch. It's nice, again, as we switch focus to them playing the Panthers and previewing that matchup. You get a team that's just really down on their luck with, Bryce Young had to be benched. Andy Dalton is stepping in, and we know as Bears fans what he brings to the table. And then you get the lowly Jaguars looking ahead to the Commanders, who just hung like 42 on their opponents. So you get these games where you can focus on those things that are those weaknesses that you show against other teams. And against the Panthers, it just continues to be the keys for me is just run the ball. And it's maybe a big revenge type game for DJ Moore where we hope that he explodes, but stick to the basics. Don't get cute. Run the ball with Swift and Roshan. Let Caleb build confidence. Of course, this defense, can batter the Panthers offense of Andy Dalton and company. You talked about them being bruised up, Ross, and they don't have a ton of weapons. They have a decent receiving core, and Chuba Hubbard has been a fine running back, I feel like, and that's where the Bears defense has struggled. But, they just got to bring it. They got to string 2 wins together in a row here before going to London and playing the Jaguars.
100%. This is one of those games where it's like you like to see them kind of take control of it from start to finish for all 4 quarters and really put up some kind of a dominant effort. Vizsla Joe hits it on the head here. Your next 5 opponents are the get right games for Caleb Williams and get a rookie quarterback going. These guys are giving up a QB rating of over 100. This is not good. This Carolina Panthers team coming into town this weekend, they're dead last in the league right now in points given up. They're 32nd in the league right now. They're giving up over 32 points a game right now this season. And then they're only scoring 18 points a game right now. So you should be able to really stick it to this team. They don't do anything good on defense. They traded away Brian Burns in the offseason. They just lost their best linebacker for the season. They've lost, they're gutted right now. They're playing second string guys and third string guys all across that defense right now. This is a game where if you're Shane Waldron, if you're Matt Eberflus, you say, look, offensive line, it's time for you to really control and dictate this game. So let's get downhill. Let's get this running game going. Let's start pushing things. And let's start opening up play action. Let's start getting Caleb bootlegs. Let's start getting him comfortable outside. Let's start stretching the field a little bit. Let's get Roman Dunze and DJ Moore down the field and really start to stretch our legs a little bit. And let's see if we can hang 30 on these guys. And in defense, do what you need to do. This is Andy Dalton. We don't feel comfortable about him being able to push the ball downfield. Their offensive line is also a mess as well. Let's kind of see if we can get after the quarterback. I'd like to see one of those dominant efforts from the Bears this weekend where they just really show teams like, okay, that's the Bears that we're looking for. That's the Caleb Williams that we're looking for, that we've been waiting for the first 4 weeks of the season. And then carry that over for the next couple of weeks. I think bare minimum, I think the Bears should win 3 games in a row coming up here.
Bare minimum.
Absolutely, bare minimum. They should win 3 games in a row. They're facing bad opponents coming up. And when you face bad opponents, you want to be a good football team, you have to be able to stomp on their necks. One thing the Bears have going for them this weekend, they've now won 7 in a row in Soldier Field. So they have the league's longest active winning streak at home right now. And they've won 5 games in a row against the spread when they're favored in games. So that's another good thing. They're going to be favored in these next 3 games, especially if Jacksonville loses on Sunday and the Bears win. They're going to be favored in London, and they're going to be favored against the Patriots as well. So it's time to start to stack some wins, because after that, you're going to start seeing some divisional games. We haven't seen any divisional teams yet, and we are in a good division. There are some good teams coming up. So get these wins when you can, because the Vikings and the Packers and the Lions are going to start popping up sooner or later.
Yeah, and they are all rolling. They are certainly those matchups are going to be much tougher than your next few games, as we mentioned. And, again, shout out to Torrey Taylor getting NFC Special Teams Player of the Week.
Kingpin.
Look at that. He's
that's what he's going with.
That's what he's going with.
Yeah, he didn't like the crocodile punter.
The crocodile punter? Come on.
He didn't like that. He said he doesn't want anything Australian based. And Legatron, I know they tried to use that this week. That's been taken years ago. So this is now Kingpin. Shout out to my friend Kirsten Tanis on Twitter. She was actually the one that coined that phrase back in the summer, and the Bears actually used it today as they celebrated him for his Special Teams Player of the Week. So looks like Kingpin is going to stick.
Kingpin. All right. How about it? And the Bears
pin, like he's pinning them deep.
A nice, very good, a very nice, a punter hype video, which was pretty outstanding. Shout out to the Bears social media team. And you talked about that home field advantage. It's real. Soldier Field has been rocking. You hope that the Bears will continue to trend upwards as far as points scored. You talked about the Panthers surrendering over 30 in the league, then this offense and defense should be in for a good performance. Any other Bears notes that we missed, Ross?
No, I just want to say one thing. As much as we love Torrey Taylor for his
Say it.
performance last week, I am very anxious for the day that we can actually celebrate not having to punt the football. And we can get for a week where we don't have to praise the punter too much, which means that he didn't get a lot of work done. So let's hope that this Sunday coming up, Caleb Williams in the offense can make due on Caleb's promise over the summer by telling Torrey Taylor, you don't got to punt, man. We don't want you on the field this week. Take a week off because we're scoring every single possession. Let's get one of those games.
That would be nice to see for sure. I remember Caleb Williams talking about Torrey Taylor earlier in the preseason and how he said, "Oh, you're not going to be punting much." Well, when he does punt, it certainly pins teams deep. So it looks like we'll give our score prediction at the end, but we're leaning heavily towards the Bears at this point. I'd like to see Austin Booker get loose on defense. Again, Jaquan Brisker and company are playing really great football. And Jalen Johnson, they're just capitalizing on a really well-coached team at this point. I think that defensive line gets going. They get a few sacks on Andy Dalton and perhaps more turnovers, and it should be smooth sailing for them. But we will focus on the rest of the NFL as we talk about the first 4 weeks of this season. I mean, the surprises could be certainly the Cowboys of the world, and the Falcons are off to a rough start. Packers 2-2, but now they get Jordan Love back. The Jets are certainly, I think, a surprise at 2-2, and putting only 9 up against the Broncos, but that speaks to how good this Broncos defense is, as people have pointed to. The good surprises being the Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield in MVP conversation already. The Bengals, what the hell is going on? They may have won against the Panthers, and Joe Burrow had a decent game, but they're in rough shape right now. They need T. Higgins back desperately, which it looks like he will finally be back. Not surprising, I guess, to an extent, that the Jaguars are bad, but to be winless is pretty terrible. Cardinals continue to be bad. We think that the 49ers are going to get it right. They just hung 30 on the Patriots, obviously missing Christian McCaffrey, but not looking like the NFC champions, of last year. But the headlines, I think, obviously the 3-1 teams to look out for are at the top of the league would be Seahawks, even though they came and lost against the Lions when the Lions hung 42 on them this last week. But it's really impressive however you get it done when you're the Chiefs, and they improved to 4-0, even with when Travis Kelce has a not so great game. And I mean, I think that you just talked about, Ross, too, the NFC North, and just how impressive it is to see the Vikings, after moving on from Kirk Cousins and, thinking JJ McCarthy being injured is just sort of a death sentence. Sam Darnold stepping in and leading this team 4-0, and this great defense, and just everything's hitting on all cylinders at this point in a tough division that we were really giving to Detroit or to the Packers. Minnesota stepped in nicely. Look at the Commanders right now, and Jaden Daniels playing really well. Tampa Bay, I mentioned, of course, with Baker Mayfield. The Texans look like they picked up right where they left off. Justin Fields leading the Steelers to a 3-1 record, almost to 4-0 against the Colts this last week in a late rush. The Bills are good despite getting just thumped by the Ravens. The Ravens are a confusing team at this point. After 4 weeks, what are your impressions?
I think it's a team that actually plays tonight. I think the Buccaneers are a sneaky, impressive team. What they did last week in Baker Mayfield, he threw for 347 yards and 3 touchdowns against that Eagles team. And they play tonight now against the Falcons. I think they're in Atlanta tonight, but holy crap, that was an impressive game to me. And, something's really wrong with that Eagles team right now. They just don't look right. They don't look right on offense. They don't look right on defense. I think Nick Sirianni is a dead man walking in terms of head coach right now. I also think that, the Chiefs, they won that football game, but they might lose the war, so to speak, because that was a costly, win with them in losing Rashee Rice now they put him on IR today. They still haven't figured out if he tore his ACL, if he's able to come back. So, we're going to see what happens with that situation, because we all know the Chiefs, even though they're 4-0, they don't care about the regular season. This team is built for January on. So now you have to put Travis Kelce into the spotlight a little bit more when you're trying to save him, because they don't have Rice and they don't have Hollywood Brown. And now they have to rely on the rookie Xavier Worthy a lot more. They don't have a running back right now because Pacheco is hurt. So, is Mahomes and Kelce able to kind of put their capes on and will this team to another Super Bowl run with all these injuries? Another surprise to me, I think, is the Dolphins. Does Tua really mean that much to them that they just look absolutely terrible? They could not get anything going. Mike McDaniel's offense just looked absolutely terrible without Tua out there. And I get it. It's a very difficult offense. There's a lot of motion involved, and it's tough for Huntley, to run that offense. But they just look bad. I didn't like his play calling at all. And if Tua can't get back on the field at any point this season, the Dolphins could be picking top 2 overall, because I just don't see how they're going to be able to get more than 3 wins this season. And then they're going to have an interesting decision to make themselves with how they want to use that top pick. Another takeaways, Ben Johnson, best offensive coordinator in the league. He's going to be the hot head coaching name again this year. And I think he will eventually leave this year. You talked about the Cowboys last week. They won a close football game, but they didn't look really right or good either. And then this Vikings team, Sam Darnold, if I would have told you in the summer Sam Darnold would be the leading candidate for MVP after 4 weeks in the season, you'd probably call me nuts and say, what was I smoking? But guess what? Sam Darnold is the leading candidate for MVP after 4 games this season. It's been that impressive. He looks good, and that offense looks good. And they had Jordan Love coming back from injury, just in a pickle the whole game. He threw the 3 interceptions. So I think this is going to be a big week across the board for the NFL. We get a London game on Sunday morning. Those games are always funky, but this is going to be a big week in terms of teams to see. Like, again, we start getting week 5 through 8. Getting through October. Who are the contenders? Who are the pretenders? And then so it's going to be interesting this week.
Yeah, that was a point I definitely wanted to make at this point in the season, was when we sort of separate those contenders from pretenders. But even 4 weeks in, it's crazy to just fast forward to week 13 and how some teams just completely fall off. So, I'll give the Chiefs, for example, the benefit of the doubt. They desperately need another wide receiver because it does look like Rashee Rice has a serious, either whether it be a torn ACL or something else. The extent of it looks pretty bad. And the receiving core outside of him isn't great. We haven't even talked about the Devontae Adams sweepstakes now with the Raiders and how he's unhappy and he's going to sit out this weekend. And we know there's a lot of names being floated around. The Chiefs, of course, the Jets are probably the favorite, perhaps. You may look at the Saints and maybe a reunion with Derek Carr, but I'm not sure the Saints are trying to swing for Devontae Adams. A lot of these teams would be interested. They just want to take on his contract at this point. But, I agree with you, Ross, as far as, the Eagles, they're just such a head scratching team when they have all of this offensive firepower and then they just get thumped by the Buccaneers and aren't able to, put up more than 16 points. It really goes with Jalen Hurts, and which Jalen Hurts are you going to get? I know they were missing Devontae Smith, and you're missing A.J. Brown at this point. So getting back to getting healthy at the right time, that'll be huge if you can sort of scrape by. But Washington's coming for you, it looks like right now, as they're really just that offense is humming, defense really playing well. They put 42 up on the Cardinals, which is crazy. We talked about this game tonight, the Bucs and the Falcons being a great one. Hopefully some offensive firepower. The Falcons played some tough competition so far, and they're going to look to get Kirk Cousins going in this game. But Al Michaels called them one of the most mysterious teams in the NFL. And it's still early, again, with 4 games under your belt, but they are that. And I think that Falcons fans would agree. They're saying, look at how we overhauled this offense. Where's show me the money with Kirk Cousins? Can we get Drake London to 1,500 yards this season? And can we get Bijan Robinson out of running back hell like he was this last year. So it'll week 5 will kick off with a bang, hopefully tonight. That's a good one to look out for. And then, of course, I think that the Panthers Bears game is one of the least attractive noon games. When you look at Ravens Bengals, is always kind of spicy. The Vikings are in London and they'll be playing the Jets. We'll see if Aaron Rodgers can do anything against this juggernaut of a Vikings team at this point. The Jaguars, again, we talked about just how desperate they are to get a win at this point. They're just terrible, hosting a not so good Colts team that's banged up as well. Bills and Texans, probably that best noon game slate. We didn't even talk about the Ravens and how they just thumped the Bills, and Derrick Henry largely to thank for that. And Lamar Jackson doesn't put up great numbers, but he said himself too, like, I don't care about the numbers, I care about getting those wins. I think that all these stars would echo it across the board. And the Bills Texans looks like a good potential rebound game for the Bills, but Texans are no slouch. What else are you looking for with week 5 slate, Ross?
Yeah, there's two games that I'm looking at. You talked about, to me, Bills Texans, that was on my list. I think that's a panic game for one fan base, because I think if whoever comes out of that game losing is going to be like, holy shit, are we really a Super Bowl team? Like, are we for real? It's going to be one of those panic games. But the two games for me that I'm looking at, Browns in Washington, Dallas in Pittsburgh. And I'm looking at both those games because early on in the season, you've got a young quarterback, Jaden Daniels, rookie, and everybody's all in on the Jaden Daniels train, but they haven't really faced a defense that can pressure you and give you different looks and really make you frustrated. And then same thing with Pittsburgh. Justin Fields had a great game last week, threw for over 300 yards, had an opportunity to win the game there at the end of the stretch. His center bounces the ball off his helmet on a bad snap. But you get a little bit more of a feisty Dallas defense. Granted, they are missing Lawrence and they're missing Micah Parsons this week due to injury. But that's still a Dallas defense that can make things interesting. And that's also a primetime game for Justin Fields. That's a Sunday night football game. So I'm just really curious at how both those quarterbacks perform against these two defenses. I think that if I'm a betting person, I think Justin Fields will favor a little bit better than Jaden Daniels. But I think this is the week. The Washington Commanders are favored right now by 3 points. I would not be surprised if this is the week where the Jaden Daniels train gets a little bit derailed and things look a little bit different than it has the last few weeks. On the flip side of that, we know we are all Deshaun Watson haters at this point. But I actually thought he looked really good last week against the Raiders. I thought his team let him down last week. He had a drop touchdown from Amari Cooper. He had a touchdown that was called back by a penalty. I actually thought he looked pretty good last week, and they should have won that football game. So either Amari Cooper is trying to tank his stock to get his ass out of Cleveland because he might want to get traded sooner than later, or he's going to get it back together this week. But I think the Browns could be on upset alert against the Commanders, and Jaden Daniels can come back down to earth. If he looks great on Sunday, then I will definitely tip my hat to him next week, and I would say this young man is in the driver's seat for Rookie of the Year.
Rolling right now, and just that team as a whole is the surprise, perhaps, of the conference of the league, and certainly in that division. When you look at the Cowboys and how much they paid Dak and CeeDee Lamb to stay, and that how this defense, like you said, is compiled, and now they are really struggling. But that's a good upset pick, Ross. And if you want to go to the Jaguars game, it's $24 tickets, so go rock it out. I don't know where Cliff's at today, but maybe he will make a trip to Jacksonville for some bad football. And yeah, I'm curious with the Steelers. I love that we've talked again about rooting for Justin Fields and how well he's been doing. And even though Russell Wilson is getting healthy, I just don't see them taking the hot hand away from a guy like Justin Fields. If you're Mike Tomlin and this football team, the way they're playing at this point, and they're welcoming in a Cowboys team that's pretty desperate for a win. They're 2-0 away. Dak Prescott is still one of those so-called elite quarterbacks. So let's see it on Sunday Night Football. It should be a great one. and then the Monday nighter is the Chiefs hosting the Saints. Chiefs looking to go 5-0. The Saints are sort of another head scratching team, again with inconsistencies with Derek Carr, but Alvin Kamara has just been a monster through 4 games thus far. But I'm curious again, Ross, I touched on it. The big headline this week is just the situation with Devontae Adams and the Raiders. Is it just as easy as saying he'll try to find his way to a Jets uniform, or do you have other teams that you have your eye on for him?
Yeah, I mean, here's my problem with going to the Jets is, you look at Garrett Wilson so far this year, and Aaron Rodgers can't find Garrett Wilson this year. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is the same quarterback that he once was. It's been now 3 years since Aaron Rodgers has had a 300-yard football game in his career. So, he looks like a guy to me who, this happens with old quarterbacks. They don't want to get hit anymore. And you look at that game on Sunday, and he's bailing out of the pocket. He just doesn't want to get hit anymore like he used to. So I started looking at this Jets team, and their leading receiver right now, let's pull this up, right? Receptions-wise, it's Breece Hall with, it's still Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson has 20 catches, but for less than 200 yards, 9.6 yards per reception and only 1 touchdown. That stinks. That's not good. And so clearly there's a disconnect here between the offense, the Asian quarterback, and they can't get their best wide receiver the ball. And in my opinion, if you can't get the best wide receiver the ball and it's not a coverage thing, why would you bring another guy into this who's just not going to get the ball either? Like he's not going to get his fair share. You should be able to get the guys that you have in that locker room going, in my opinion, if you're the Jets. But if they want to do it because that's Aaron Rodgers' boy, I mean, we've seen already the Jets have acquiesced to everything that Aaron Rodgers has asked for. That's why guys like Alan Lazard are there, and Nathaniel Hackett is the offensive coordinator. Robert Saleh just bends over and gets smacked on the ass from Aaron Rodgers and takes everything from him. In my opinion, I think the Saints should call and get this deal done because I think that is a better fit. This is a team that could go to playoffs, could win that division. I think that offense looks really solid this year, and I think Devontae Adams could show up there ASAP and eat in that offense that Kubiak is running right now with Derek Carr, and they have Alvin Kamara, and really take a lot of pressure off of everybody. So that would be the team I would like to see him go to. Would be the Saints, but if he goes to the Jets, that's fine. I just don't think it's going to work out. I think they've got their own internal issues right now, and adding another guy to a situation is not going to help it. It's like, trying to have another kid to make the marriage, survive and work. It never ends well.
You can't fix just bad quarterback play, and as much as Aaron Rodgers is heralded as a Hall of Fame quarterback and one of the best of all time, he's still on his way out as far as he's definitely in the back 9 of his career. And Garrett Wilson was billed as a top 5 wide receiver and, hasn't played as such based on Aaron Rodgers' performance. That whole team's just kind of a mess too, with Breece Hall underperforming and just how they're built. Robert Saleh, you talked about just not being kind of a fraud as a head coach at this point. They just really got to probably hit the panic button here with this Jets season early on. I mean, it's very early, but if I'm the Chiefs, it's really intriguing to if Raiders will take some sort of that contract on, some parts of that contract on. You could get Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Devontae Adams together, and look out. The rich only get richer. That's a big pipe dream, but I think
that's the best fit. That's clearly the best fit. I think Mark Davis's allegiance to the AFC West will not allow him to trade in division, but it should be the case. And to be honest with you, if the Chiefs can't get a guy like Devontae Adams, they should be calling Cleveland for Amari Cooper. If Amari Cooper doesn't want to be in Cleveland anymore, then get on the phone and go get his ass. Because again, this is probably your last run with Mahomes and Kelce. I think Kelce is definitely done after this season. And you don't ever know how long Andy Reid wants to stay around and keep doing this, even though he keeps winning the Super Bowl. So, the Chiefs are 100% an all-in team. I completely agree with you there.
For sure. Let's put a pin on the NFL and talk about the White Sox, Ross. I just had a note on them, of course, too. Just Just happy birthday. The season's over. 41 and lost to 121 games. Good Lord, just enough for the most losses in modern MLB history. It was a merciful ending. Just unbelievably bad. And we talked about, obviously, both of us in Chicago, or I'm right outside of it, and you're in the city, and we talk about the potential for this new stadium, and Reinsdorf's keep sort of doing that to distract you from the fact that there's just terrible baseball being played in the South Side, and losing 121 games being historically bad, you just don't really know where to go from there. And on the north side, Cubs missing the playoffs is big. I know that the Brewers are vying for a playoff future at this point. With how much money was being spent on the north side, they just care about it being like Disneyland as opposed to a competitive baseball team too. So not a great time for baseball as we talk about October baseball in a moment. But what do you do, Ross, with this White Sox team? What are your thoughts there? How do you fix it?
Yeah, well, we'll see, right? And general manager Chris Getz has a very tall task ahead of him, and also thanks to a dumbass rule in baseball, despite having the worst record in a very very long time, the White Sox can't even draft first overall this year because they have some stupid rule about, I don't even know what it is. It's something about big markets and back-to-back bad seasons, even though the White Sox don't ever act like a big market team. But anyway, they are drafting 10th overall this year. So they can't even get this year's best prospect in the draft, which is absolutely just insane. What a dumb rule. Rob Manfred's a moron, but that's another subject for another day. But they're going to have to draft their way out of this. We already know that Jerry Reinsdorf is not going to spend money on this team. He's not going to get big name free agents. Juan Soto's a free agent this year. He's not coming to the White Sox. None of these guys ever come to the White Sox. You have to be able to draft yourself out of it. And let's hope that Chris Getz can at least build up his minor league system and build up his scouting department, which he has alluded to, that most of the money this year is not going to go towards spending on free agents, but beefing up the scouting department and the international department and things like that to try and accumulate and stockpile young players, which I'm okay with. I mean, you look around the division right now, the rest of the three teams in the division are still in the playoffs. The Royals won yesterday on the strength of Bobby Witt Jr., who was in the Andrew Vaughn draft. You see that the what the hell is that team called now? The Guardians. The Guardians have moved. I almost said what they used to be called. The Guardians who moved on as well, right? And so all those teams have good young talent, and you look around the league right now, and that's what you need to do. And then from there, you kind of add in your big name free agents and stuff like that. So let's hope that they're able to at least stockpile some young talent, and let's hope that this team is likable as well going forward. That's a big thing for me. Is this season you had guys like throughout the years like Yohan Moncada, who just constantly gets hurt and was loafing around, and same thing with Eloy Jimenez, and even Luis Robert sometimes has his moments. Let's hope that they're able to add some talent and some guys that are very likable, and you stay away from the Mike Clevengers of the world who have domestic violence accusations on their jacket, and still you bring him in so he can have a 5.9 ERA and stuff like that. And they're doing the same thing with the Bulls right now, to get on a side tangent. But the Bulls have a guy that was accused of statutory rape, and then signed a guy today that exposed himself to multiple women. Like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, if you're going to be bad, at least have guys we like on the team that are going to be bad. Don't bring in assholes if you're going to be a bad team.
Yeah, have guys of good character at the very least. And with the White Sox, it's a long road ahead. And you talked about it, whether it be farming and through the draft, it's very tough when you just think about a couple of years ago and how this offense was really rolling and what could have been, and then just really blew up in your face. And now we have October baseball well underway, and we're figuring out if the Mets or Brewers will play the Phillies in the divisional round. The road goes through the Yankees and the Dodgers. Tigers and Royals advanced in the AL. You talked about the Royals and how well they're doing. And the Tigers, just Detroit sports in general, doing quite well at this point. I don't know, man. It's tough. We talked about it at the beginning of the show, how much there is going on. And I just don't have the time or interest into October baseball. It's hard to compete with the NFL season on the weekends, and then I'm behind on my stories. But give me a Phillies and a Royals World Series. You heard
Ooh.
it here first. Who do you like for the World Series, Ross? What do you got?
I'm going almost what baseball wants. So baseball, obviously, to save this sport, and
Big
it needs some
market.
saving right now. They want you to see Shohei Ohtani in the World Series, and they want you to see Shohei Ohtani in the World Series against the New York Yankees and Aaron Judge and Juan Soto and those guys. I think the Yankees get there. I think they've got the talent to get there. I think they get there. However, I like the Padres to knock off the Dodgers as early as this weekend that series starts. Padres are not afraid of the Dodgers. Padres have been the best team in baseball since the beginning of September. They are rolling right now. Fernando Tatis Jr. is a superstar in this league. And I think they knock off the Dodgers, who has pitching issues right now. And I got a Padres versus Yankees World Series, which is, you cannot get any different between two amazing cities in the United States than San Diego and New York City. Those are two very opposite cities.
Very much so. Padres clicking at the right time. You talked about it. There's not much to look forward to with the Bulls. We'll see. They're just, this team's going to be bad. It's going to be rough as far as the NBA is concerned in Chicago. And we got to end with just a lot of death, unfortunately, and Dikembe Mutombo and the Giants of a giant of his sport, just literally and figuratively, and Pete Rose passing away, the hit king. Pete Rose, not getting in the hall is just one of the greatest travesties. And just a pretty likable guy as far as his media presence. I know they're like Kevin Burkhardt and guys like that really talked about how fun he was to work with, and certainly one of those guys who pioneered marketing himself. And he put whatever gambling scandals aside, he just really is untouchable, I feel like, in a lot of aspects of baseball. Charlie Hustle. And as far as Mutombo is concerned, the same thing could be said. His marketability, and we remember, whether it be Geico commercials or spots in movies, and his just defensive wagging of the figure was just so cool, and just a dominating presence, and that crazy sort of Cookie Monster voice that he had as well. Just in very different circumstances for how they both passed as well, but definitely giants of their sports, and their legacies are solidified. But fucking, like, put Pete Rose in the hall posthumously. It's crazy.
It is crazy. And I actually think a lot of it was on him. Listen, Pete Rose was an asshole. He was defiant to the end, and he was he was a very stubborn man. And I think, to be honest with you, that plays into a part of his legacy. I start to wonder, when he passed away, what means more for his legacy? The fact that he is the hit king and he doesn't get in, and we will always remember that, or if he actually does get in. Because I think it might be the fact that he never got in, which would suck, but I think that's the bigger part of his legacy and something that we'll always remember. You cannot have two. These are, we talked about San Diego and New York being polar opposites of each other. In terms of individuals, Mutombo and Pete Rose were polar opposites of each other as well.
Yeah.
Pete Rose was just a very rigid man, a very thorny individual, who definitely rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, but also had his defenders and whatnot. Guys like Frank Thomas, loved Pete Rose and loved talking baseball with him, and he was a great baseball guy to talk with. Whereas you look at a guy like Dikembe Mutombo, and everybody loved that guy. Everybody loved him. You never heard somebody say, "I don't like Dikembe Mutombo." And he had an amazing career. He had an amazing run in Denver. He knocked off that number 1 seed, Seattle Supersonics, led by Sean Kemp and Gary Payton, where he has that iconic image of him holding the basketball on the court as an 8 seed and knocking those guys off. He has some awesome years in Atlanta. I implore everybody to watch the clips of him and Jordan constantly talking to each other, and him telling Michael Jordan, "Michael, you never dunked on me, Michael." And Michael's like, "I did, Dikembe, I got you." And then finally, Michael actually did do it in the game and wags his finger at Dikembe Mutombo. But everybody loved that guy, and his work that he did in Africa, his philanthropy work that he did. His mother died in Congo, where he's from, because she didn't have access to a hospital to get to a hospital in time. So what does that man do when he gets some money in his pocket? He goes back to Congo and he builds a hospital there for people to be able to come to and get the things that they need. And that's just the kind of guy he was. He was an amazing individual. So RIP to both of them. They're both amazing men for two different reasons, but should be definitely remembered. And RIP to John Amos, one of the best TV and movie fathers of all time. And RIP to Chris Christopherson as well, who also passed away last week. An amazing character actor. We've lost some really talented individuals the last couple of days.
We sure have. Rough few weeks between James Earl Jones and John Amos for the fathers in Coming to America. Just two vital parts of that great comedy movie with Eddie Murphy and Arsenio. And Chris Christopherson, I just urge you to look up his lyrics. I don't have any in front of me, but a really polished musician and just left his mark through his lyrics for sure. Let's wrap this up with a Bears prediction. Ross, what do you got for us?
I've got Bears 31, Panthers 17. I think that this is the week that the Bears put some points on the board. They're going to cover that line -4. They're going to get themselves with the over as well. So I think this is the week that the Bears offense really starts looking like a competent, good offense in the NFL. And then they ride on a high of a 2-game winning streak, an 8-game winning streak at home. And then it's off to London to see how these guys fare against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I like it. I also agree as far as a win is concerned. I think the Bears, they muster up 27 points. I think the Panthers only put up 14. And I think that this, we see, again, the trend of DeAndre Swift and the run game getting going continues. I think he goes over 100 at least scrimmage yards for sure. I think Caleb Williams, maybe 1 or 2 touchdowns through the air, build some more confidence. We see Cole come out with another big game, and Bears win 2 in a row. Get ready for the terrible Jaguars in London. That'll be it for us. Thanks to everybody for watching and listening in right here on YouTube. Remember, if you've missed any of the previous episodes, they're up on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your shows from the Barroom Network. Like, subscribe, tell a friend or two. I'm at the Real Evan Mac. Ross is at Ross Reed. Remember to follow at Barroom Network for all our breaking Bears news and Bears coverage throughout the season. But for now, we say deuces. Everybody be good to each other out there. So long, everybody.
Peace.